The ground trembled beneath the massive drop ships as their landing struts slammed into the alien soil. Captain Elias Voss tightened his grip on the safety rail, his muscles coiled with anticipation. Outside, the planet stretched in every direction, an endless expanse of cobalt-hued jungle, the air shimmering with an eerie bioluminescence. "Touchdown confirmed," the pilot announced, his voice tight over the comms. "All right, people," Elias barked, his voice cutting through the cabin. "We're here to establish Genesis 1. First boots on this rock. Move fast, move smart, and stay sharp." The cargo bay doors hissed open, and the first wave of armored colonists poured out, pulse rifles scanning the horizon. They weren't expecting trouble, no intelligent life had been detected. The survey drones reported nothing beyond aggressive flora and standard planetary hazard. They were wrong. Elias led his squad onto the alien surface. The dirt crunched underfoot, almost glass-like. The trees, if they could be called that, coiled upward, their trunks twisting unnaturally as though reacting to their presence. "This place is wrong," Lieutenant Iko murmured beside him. "Save the poetry," Elias replied, sweeping his rifle in an arc. "Science teams, move out. I want full atmospheric reports in the next 20. The colonists moved with military precision, erecting perimeter defenses and deploying automated sentry turret. Huge construction mechs stomped forward, beginning the framework for the first human settlement. Then the first scream split the air. Elias spun, heart hammering. A soldier, Davies, was on his knees, clutching his helmet. His suit's visor cracked with a sickening crunch, then something burst from inside it. A black, insectoid limb, slick with his blood. "Contact!" someone shouted. Pulse fire erupted. Soldiers sprayed rounds into the trees, but the jungle itself seemed to move. Shapes detached from the shadows, skittering low, fast. A shriek ripped through the squad as another soldier went down, his body yanked backward, disappearing into the undergrowth. Elias fired, his rifle barking out plasma rounds. He barely caught a glimpse of their attackers, chitinous bodies, shifting between reality and nightmare. Their limbs elongated, too many joints bending in ways that defied anatomy. "Fall back," he roared. The defensive perimeter became a war zone. The sentry turrets locked onto targets, unleashing torrents of gunfire, but the creatures moved unnaturally, phasing in and out of sight. One turret was suddenly silent, drenched in a thick, black fluid that sizzled as if melting the metal. "Command, this is Captain Voss. We are under attack," he yelled into his comms. The response was static. Then whispers. They slithered through his helmet speakers, alien and intimate, like something breathing against his ear. The words were not human. Not meant for human minds. Elias staggered, gripping his head. And then, as quickly as it started, the attack stopped. The creatures vanished. The jungle was still again. Breathless, Elias took stock. 12 soldiers dead. 4 missing. The first wave of the colony shattered. The trees rustled, and something dropped at his feet. A severed human hand. Not one of theirs. The fingers had decomposed. Torn fingernails, dirt-encrusted knuckles. Ancient. Someone had been here before them. And they hadn't survived. Elias exhaled sharply, looking at his team. They were not alone. And they had never been. The colony was in full lockdown. Automated turrets swiveled in every direction, their sensors sweeping the jungle for any sign of the creatures. Floodlights bathed the twisted foliage in an eerie glow, but the jungle seemed to drink in the light, swallowing it whole. The air was thick with tension, the scent of burnt ozone from plasma fire still clinging to the ground. Captain Elias Voss stood at the heart of the command center, his jaw tight as he replayed the footage from their helmet cams. The creatures weren't just fast. They didn't move like any known life form, skittering, phasing in and out, as if reality itself struggled to contain them. And those whispers, whatever they were, still lingered in his mind, like an echo he couldn't shake. "Captain," Lieutenant Iko called from the comm station, her voice strained. "I've got something." Elias moved to her side. Iko pulled up a topographic scan of the region. We assumed this was untouched land, she said. But the drones picked up structures beneath the surface. Deep ones? Elias narrowed his eyes. How deep? At least a kilometer down. This planet wasn't just visited before us, Captain. It was built on. Before Elias could respond, a klaxon blared. The colony's outer perimeter sensors had been tripped. Movement detected, shouted Corporal Reyes from the security feed. Elias and Iko rushed to the monitors. The screen showed a blurred shape moving just outside the barriers, too fast for the auto-turrets to track. It wasn't attacking. It was circling. Watching. All units, full combat readiness, Elias ordered. The colony's troops assembled in tight formations, rifles at the ready. The jungle was silent, too silent. Then, a voice crackled over the open comms. "Help me!" The words were barely a whisper, static-laced and weak. Elias' blood ran cold. "Identify yourself," he barked. No response. Just breathing. Labored. Inhuman. Then laughter. Low. Wrong. "Voss," it said. Elias stiffened. The voice wasn't coming from the comms. It was inside his helmet. And then the attack began. From all sides, the jungle exploded with movement. The creatures rushed the perimeter, their elongated limbs slicing through the air with terrifying speed. Gunfire erupted, turrets spinning, plasma bolts slamming into the darkness. One of the beasts phased through a barricade, materializing inside the colony. It moved with jerky, unnatural motions, too fast, too deliberate. It tore through a soldier's chest before Elias even had time to react. He raised his rifle, aimed, and fired. The plasma round struck the creature's torso, sizzling against its chitinous exoskeleton. It screeched, recoiling, but not dying. More of them poured in. Screams filled the night. The colony was falling apart. Then, out of nowhere, a deep, guttural roar echoed through the battlefield. The creatures froze. For the first time, they hesitated. A figure emerged from the jungle, cloaked in something metallic and organic all at once. Humanoid, but not human. It moved with calculated precision, its armor reflecting the dim floodlights. The creatures turned their attention to the newcomer, and then, chaos. The stranger unleashed a weapon unlike anything Elias had ever seen, a spear of crackling energy, lashing through the air like a whip. The creatures howled as they were struck, their forms flickering, phasing in and out as though their very existence was being disrupted. Elias took the opening. "Regroup. Fall back to the inner sector." The soldiers scrambled, dragging the wounded as the unknown warrior cut a bloody path through the creatures. The beasts screeched, their bodies distorting, and then, just like before, they vanished. For a long moment, silence. Elias turned his weapon on the armored figure, breath heaving. "Identify yourself," he demanded. The stranger tilted its head, studying him. Then, in perfect English, it spoke. "You should not have come here." Elias gritted his teeth. "Who the hell are you?" The warrior took a slow step forward. "This place is not yours to claim," it said. Iko's voice crackled through the comms. "Captain, we ran a bioscan on that thing. It's not one of them." Elias tightened his grip on his rifle. "Then what is it?" A pause. Then, Iko's answer chilled him to the core. "Human." The stranger locked eyes with Elias, its face obscured by an alien helmet. "You are trespassers," it said. "And you will not survive." Elias kept his rifle trained on the armored figure, his pulse hammering in his ears. Around them, the battlefield was eerily quiet. The creatures had vanished just as suddenly as they had attacked, leaving behind the smoldering wreckage of sentry turrets and the bodies of fallen colonists. "You're human?" Elias asked, barely believing the words. "How the hell is that possible?" The figure tilted its head slightly, studying him. The voice that came from within the helmet was calm, deliberate. "I was. Once." That sent a shiver through Elias' spine. "Captain," Iko's voice crackled in his earpiece, urgent. "We need to get inside. Our defenses are crippled, and our wounded won't last out here. Elias hesitated, then lowered his weapon slightly. Get everyone to the inner compound. Now. His soldiers moved quickly, dragging the injured toward the fortified heart of the colony. The stranger watched them go but didn't move. Elias took a slow step forward, keeping his stance guarded. You gonna help us, or are you just here to deliver cryptic warnings? The helmeted figure regarded him for a long moment, then turned toward the jungle. You are already dead. You just don't know it yet? Elias clenched his jaw. We don't die that easy. The stranger turned back to him. Neither did we. Elias narrowed his eyes. We. Before the stranger could respond, a deep, resonant boom shook the ground beneath them. Dust and debris rained from the jungle canopy as the earth trembled. A second later, a massive sinkhole yawned open just beyond the perimeter, swallowing entire sections of the colony's outer defenses. Elias barely had time to react before something emerged from the chasm. It was bigger than the others. Much bigger. A monstrous form, its body a shifting nightmare of black chitin and flickering energy, heaved itself up from the abyss. Its elongated skull bore a crown of jagged spines, and where its eyes should have been, only a seething void pulsed with malevolent hunger. The stranger tensed. It has awakened. What has awakened? Elias shouted. The ground around them cracked as the massive creature took a step forward, its clawed limbs distorting reality itself with each movement. The air shimmered, bending like heat waves. Elias could hear the whispers again, stronger now. They clawed at the edges of his mind, writhing, screaming, laughing. We need to move, the stranger barked. The beast let out a bone-rattling shriek. The jungle itself recoiled, as though the planet itself feared this thing. Then, without warning, it lunged. Elias dove aside as the creature's massive claw slammed into the ground where he had stood a second before. The impact sent a shockwave through the colony, shattering structures and tossing soldiers like rag dolls. The stranger moved faster than humanly possible, their energy weapon lashing out. The crackling spear struck the creature's torso, and for a brief moment it convulsed, its form flickering erratically. But then, it absorbed the energy. Elias fired his pulse rifle, but the plasma rounds vanished into the creature's shifting mass, swallowed whole. That's not good, Aiko's voice came through his helmet, laced with terror. The beast turned its eyeless gaze toward the colony, and Elias felt something in his mind break. The whispers became screams, ancient and all-consuming. And then Elias saw. A vision. No, a memory. Not his own. An army. Not human, but something like them. Armored figures, much like the stranger, standing defiant against an endless tide of horrors. The creatures were smaller then, but still deadly. And at the center of it all, this thing. The first of them. The oldest. A hunger that had never been satisfied. And one by one, the warriors fell. Consumed. Corrupted. The vision snapped away, and Elias found himself on his knees, gasping for breath. The stranger grabbed him by the arm, hauling him to his feet. Now you understand. Elias staggered, his mind still reeling. What is that thing? The stranger's voice was grim. The reason your kind was never supposed to come here. The creature let out another shriek, and from the depths of the jungle, more of the horrors emerged. Dozens. Hundreds. The colony's defenses were gone. They were outnumbered. Outmatched. Elias clenched his fists. Then how do we kill it? The stranger turned their helmet toward him. You don't. The captain's grip tightened on his rifle. Like hell we don't. The ground trembled as the monstrous entity took another step forward, its massive form distorting the air around it. The whispers in Elias' head had become a roar, an ancient voice speaking in a language he couldn't understand, yet he felt its meaning. Hunger. Endless. Devouring. The smaller creatures poured in from the jungle like a living tide, their spindly, unnatural bodies phasing in and out of reality. The colony was barely holding together, its automated turrets shattered, its walls breached. Screams filled the night as the last line of human defenses collapsed. Elias gritted his teeth. Not like this. The stranger grabbed his shoulder. We have to go. There is no victory here. Elias shook him off. If we run, we die anyway. We stand, we fight. You still don't understand, the stranger growled. This is not a war. It is an execution. Just like before. Elias turned sharply. Before. The stranger hesitated, but then something in his stance shifted. Resolve. This was our world once. We came here, just like you. Colonizers. Explorers. Believers. The stranger's voice was laced with something Elias could only describe as grief. We built cities, harnessed the planet's energy. We thought it was ours. Elias felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. And the stranger's hands curled into fists. And we woke them up. The massive creature let out a sound, a laugh or something close to it. A deep, guttural noise that resonated through the planet itself. We fought back, the stranger continued. We built weapons beyond your understanding, burned entire continents to stop them. But they don't die. They only grow. They adapt. We lost. Those of us who survived sealed ourselves away beneath the surface, deep underground, waiting for a time when they would be weak enough to destroy. Elias glanced at Aiko, who was listening through his comms. The underground structures, she whispered. That's where they've been hiding. But we waited too long, the stranger said bitterly. And now you've brought them back. Elias clenched his fists. Then we finish what you started. The stranger shook his head. We don't have time for speeches, Captain. That thing isn't a single entity. It's a hive. You kill one piece, it regenerates. You burn it, it reforms. But deep beneath this planet, buried where we left it, is a weapon. A failsafe. Then take me there, Elias demanded. The stranger hesitated. The creatures were closing in. The massive entity raised one of its colossal, distorted limbs, preparing to strike the colony's last remaining structure, the command center. There's no time, the stranger said. Elias turned to Aiko. Get the remaining colonists inside the last transport shuttle. If we fail, I want you off this planet. Aiko's eyes widened. Elias, no. That's an order. Aiko's jaw tightened, but she gave a reluctant nod. You better come back. Elias turned to the stranger. Let's move. The two of them sprinted toward the sinkhole where the beast had emerged. The ground was unstable, crumbling beneath their feet as they descended into the abyss. Below, massive alien ruins stretched into the darkness, structures covered in shifting, living veins of the creature's flesh. The core is beneath this, the stranger said. A weapon designed to consume them the way they consume everything else. Elias' boots hit solid ground, and they ran. Behind them, the beast above let out another roar. The tunnels trembled as the creatures poured in after them. The ruins pulsed with an eerie light. The deeper they went, the more Elias could feel something alive in the walls, like the planet itself was conscious. Finally, they reached it. A massive machine, buried deep within the ruins, its surface covered in ancient markings. It hummed faintly, its power weak, but present. This will erase them, the stranger said, moving toward the console. It will turn the entire planet against them. But once it's activated, Elias already knew. We won't be able to leave. The stranger placed a hand on the machine. I was already dead the moment I set foot on this world. You, however, you still have a choice. The creatures were coming. Their screeches echoed down the tunnels. Elias could already see the first ones rounding the corners, crawling along the walls, their eyes glowing with hunger. Elias took a breath, and then he slammed his hand onto his comms. Aiko, tell me that shuttle's prepped. Waiting on you, she shouted back. You better be running. Elias turned to the stranger. Tell me how to start it. The stranger hesitated. You're not staying behind? I don't do noble sacrifices, Elias growled. We hit the kill switch, then we run like hell. A slow grin formed beneath the stranger's helmet. Then let's move. They worked fast, their hands flying over the console. The creatures were almost upon them, hissing, shrieking. One lunged, but Elias fired his rifle point-blank into its skull. The thing twitched, then collapsed. Now, the stranger roared. Elias slammed the final sequence. The machine whirred to life. A deep, resonating pulse shot through the planet. The walls shuddered. The creatures screamed. Then everything changed. The flesh-covered walls peeled back violently, as if something deep within the planet had awoken. The tunnels themselves rebelled against the creatures. A massive shock wave erupted outward, and suddenly, the creatures were melting. The massive entity above howled as its body twisted, warped. The jungle itself lashed out against it. The planet had turned against them. Elias grabbed the stranger. Move! They sprinted back toward the surface. The world around them was collapsing. Chasms opened, swallowing the creatures whole. The massive entity above screeched one final time before its form collapsed in on itself, sucked into the very abyss it had crawled from. Elias burst from the tunnels, dragging the stranger with him. The colony was gone. The landscape was shifting, folding inward, consuming itself. And in the distance, the shuttle was lifting off. Elias ran. The last transport was ascending, but Aiko was holding position for as long as she could. He pushed himself harder. The stranger was right beside him. The ground was breaking apart. Then, Aiko's voice in his comms. Jump! Elias leapt. His fingers caught the lowered landing ramp. The stranger grabbed on beside him. The shuttle lurched upward. Beneath them, the planet devoured itself. The jungle, the ruins, the horror, it was all collapsing, folding into nothingness. Then, silence. Elias lay on the cold metal floor of the shuttle, chest heaving. The stranger sat beside him, staring out the window as the planet shrank in the distance. Aiko appeared over them, breathing hard. Remind me to kill you for that. Elias let out a weak chuckle. Noted. The stranger finally spoke. You saved nothing. Elias exhaled. We saved ourselves? The stranger turned his gaze back to the dying planet.